Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Julie Kang, and I serve on the Seattle City Club as a board member. And we would like you to say hello to someone next to you and say welcome. All right. Well, thank you for joining us at the Civic Cocktail, the path forward, Native leadership in an evolving Pacific Northwest. I want to express my deep gratitude to our speakers, Muckleshoot Indian Tribe Council Member Donnie Stevenson, and my D5 Seattle City Council Member Deborah Juarez.
DJ D5.
I also appreciate all of you in the audience for joining us at this important event. Thank you also to the staff at the Collective, Bermudez Media, and our sponsor, Comcast. And also help me to welcome our moderator, Colleen Echohawk. I'll let you take it from here.
Well, good evening, everyone. So glad to see you. What a great crowd, right? What a crowd. This is an exciting night in our city. There's been a lot going on. So thank you for taking the time to come out on a very rainy night. I got very confused on the way here because I was talking to my wonderful sister, Lael Echohawk. She lives in DC. We're chatting away. I park 3 blocks away for some reason, even though I've been here many times, and I'd walk in the rain. I told her I'm going to be interviewing Deborah Juarez, the Deborah Juarez, who our family has known for over 25-ish years. Deborah is a legend, and I was also going to be with Donnie Stevenson from the incredible Muckleshoot tribe, and my sister says, oh, you better put out a swear jar.
Good.
So it's going to be good. We're going to be spicy, and we are going to talk about things that really matter here in our city. If you do not know me, I'm Colleen Echohawk. I'm an enrolled member of the Pawnee Nation of Oklahoma, the mighty nation of Pawnee. And I'm also from the Upper Athabascan people, Mantasset Lake, Alaska. I am also an urban Native person. If you are not aware, we have over 80,000 Native people who live in King County, plus probably, and that includes the Muckleshoot and the Snoqualmie Indian tribes. And so I'm a part of a large group of people that have migrated here from other places around the country and feel very, very fortunate to live in these Coast Salish territories and to get to know both Muckleshoot and Snoqualmie tribes who have a government-to-government relationship with the city of Seattle. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the impact that having a council member on our city council for several years now has come back to 9 years, come back to help support us through some transitions in the city.
Here, get you your money.
That's right. That's right. DJ D5. That's just what we say out in D5 about our wonderful Deborah Juarez. And then we're also going to ask Donnie to just talk about what it's been like for him in the many, many roles that he has taken on here in the city. And so I just want to thank you both for being here. And just I'm going to ask Donnie first, just to kind of introduce yourself, introduce where you're from, and what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So first things first, we Donnie Stevenson, Teedstad, Muckleshoot Ops, Chet, Hotslahale. Welcome, everyone. My name is Donnie Stevenson. I'm a member of the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe, an elected member of the Muckleshoot Tribal Council. Good day to all of you. I also hold the privilege and honor of being an inaugural member of the City of Seattle's Indigenous Advisory Council. So work directly with the city and help to sort of guide, include Indigenous voice within that environment as it relates to all aspects of the beautiful homeland here that we all share. It really is an incredible honor and a privilege to be here today, or this evening, I guess today, to speak to sort of all of the important issues surrounding sort of the ability of the tribe and Indigenous people there from within the city to hold place and hold value within this place that is so fundamentally rooted in Indigenous culture that no matter where you walk within the city, you're walking in the footsteps of the First Peoples, and that the foundation of the city is really rooted in the people who sort of lived and occupied this area first. And it's such a fundamental part of the identity of not only the city of Seattle, but really the whole region overall, the Salish Sea and surrounding areas from the base of the Cascade Range all the way to these salt and fresh waters that make up the beautiful place that we all live and love. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here, and look forward to a solid conversation this evening. Couldn't be happier to be here with Deborah. That she's been a strong leader and advocate for not only Indigenous people but all people in the region for such a long time that it's an incredible honor to share the stage. So thank you.
Truly, truly. And I just want to say, Donnie, I appreciate your helping us connect back to your communities and also to the Salish Sea. My sister always says, another sister, I have many, always says, like, you know, we need to remember that we're breathing in the same air and resources that your ancestors breathed in and out. And I love that. I love that picture and that image. All of us who have landed in this beautiful city, we have I think we're breathing in some pretty darn good air and leadership. And yeah, I just am so grateful that you're here, and the way that you show up in the world is just wonderful. So thank you. And I'm going to pass it over to the one and only, the Honorable Deborah Juarez, council member. You want to give us your intro and what you're all about.
Well, thank you, Colleen and Donnie. It's wonderful to be here tonight. I've been here a couple times for Civic Cocktail for different issues. So let me just say this. I have an ongoing joke with the Echo Hawk sisters that the Pawnees, you remember Dancing with Wolves? The bad Indians? Pawnee. So
That movie is historically inaccurate, but okay.
I love saying that. Like, no, that's
I
the
know,
Pawnee.
it's good.
So my name is Deborah Juarez, born and raised on the Puyallup Reservation. My stepdad who raised me was Yakima. My sister's enrolled Yakima. I'm enrolled Blackfeet with my other side of my family. My name is Natui Mististake, which means Holy Mountain Woman. I got my adult name when I turned 50. I had my mother's name up until I was 50. I have 2 daughters. I also have a Raven and a Memphis, and now I'm a new grandmother, which I'm just loving being a grandparent. And I am really happy to see Donnie here and actually Colleen, I've seen Colleen in every different iteration of her career in the last 10, 15 years, and her sisters. So watching her from housing to Chief Seattle to HN to Roots Housing now, when she ran for mayor, working with Donnie at Sound Transit, all the regional issues, transportation issues, seeing him be appointed to the Indigenous Advisory Council, which we created, and he was one of our 9-member board, 4 of which are elected leaders, Yakima, Snoqualmie, Suquamish, and Muckleshoot. Yeah. And so finally, and I think we'll get to that, you brought that one question up. Mm-hmm. What we're trying to do, and we've always done, is to weave in tribal ways of knowing into actual city government and how we think. I just was speaking at Native Action Network down at Muckleshoot, and I still on my high from last night with VP Harris. I got to meet with her ahead of time. Met with her before. She was in DC, and she actually introduced at the Honoring Women's Luncheon in Washington, DC with all of our Native women. We had VP, when she was running for president, I worked on her campaign early. I asked her to introduce your sister, Abigail, when she got an award. And I remember when VP Harris she was still running for president, when she sat down, she goes, man, I'm so glad I spoke before I spoke, because Abigail brought the house down. But she's like, what an honor. And so I've been involved in politics. And it's very interesting now. One of my mentors, who's also like my foster mother, Ramona Bennett, has a book out, I understand, and I go way back to those days. I'll go back to Indian Women's Service League days as a foster kid, 12, 13 years old, with, Auntie Julie Johnson, Ella Aquino. I mean, I can rattle all these people off. So for me, getting older and watching these folks come up the ranks and being able to mentor them and also do what we do, what a lot of non-Indians don't do, is pull them aside and say, hey, you need to step back a little. You need to listen. And because that happened to me, except for people who are much more bolder and kind of meaner. Auntie Julie is now the elder. I called her the Tony Soprano of Indian country, because she can look at you with a look, and you know it's time to sit down. So I want to thank you. I was on city council. I was elected for 2 terms. And then I came back because I was asked to come back to fill out a term, and I'm going to finish that up, and I think we'll be done in 12 or 13 months, get through this budget cycle, get to the next one. I'm really happy to say that we got through this young woman who got tons of money for housing, Chief Seattle Club. We got them in the budget. We got Saline and Health Board. We closed the gap there for their treatment center at 2.5. We asked for 4, we got 2, and I closed the gap, so we got $4 million in the budget for them. We got money in the budget for the Tubbins Center. But I'm just happy to deliver for Indian country and nonprofit and Indigenous-led organizations that provide services for all of our relatives and their families. And that's one thing I'm very proud about Native people, is we understand the power of giving. Yeah. I know that I'm just going to say one quick little mean thing, because my daughters are millennials and they drive me crazy. My point is this: you don't get everything you want. You have to work hard for it. And I have to remind them that they come from a very big place of privilege. Both their parents are lawyers, paid for your college, helped you with it. We didn't have to do that, but we did that. I didn't get that, but that didn't stop me from getting out there doing what I had to do, putting myself through college, putting myself through law school. And just very briefly, I was a judge, a public defender, and did some other stuff, governor, back, ran for office, won, and now I'm here. So thank you.
Oh man, you are a badass. You can clap for that. Come on. Like, I am always so inspired by you. And I do have, we've been friends with each other for over 25 plus years. You are consistent. You support, you give feedback, you offer excellent advice, you're hilarious. And man, I've just been so honored to be in your presence for all these years. And, we're in such an interesting time in the city and the country. I reflect back, I've been here for over 30 years now. 25, 30 years ago, there wasn't such a strong Native presence in this city, I always remember the time when my kiddos and we flew into Vancouver, BC, and we got out of the plane, and my kid was like, where are we, in a Native airport, It is. It's a beautiful airport. But I share that because even though we're a city named after a chief and we have such strong connections with Muckleshoot and Suquamish, this government-to-government relationship, it didn't really feel like a Native city or place. And I think we have failed in that in our American cities and urban planning for a really long time. And I see in the past, 10 years, a remarkable change in the way the city looks like. And I bring that up right now because when we think about what's going on around the country, and we think about the blatant racism that's happening straight from the federal government, when we think about the way that our federal government has blatantly not supporting basic food and needs of our community, we have a different kind of leadership here that has been influenced by both of you. And I wonder if you can just reflect a little bit on this question around the ways that Indigenous approaches inspire more equitable, relational public policy and civic engagement, and what that has looked like and meant for you. And maybe we'll start with you, Deborah, because you have certainly always led as a Native woman in the space of city council.
Well, 2 things, and I've been saying this for a few years. Number one, and I've been telling all the young, where's our friend from Native Action Network? I just saw, there she's back there. There's this thing that I've been telling people of color, working with people of color, and I do not like the term BIPOC. I don't, because I think non-Indians like to bring out their quote-unquote BIPOCs for their next social justice movement, and I'm not a goddamn prop. Yeah. So what I say is telling young folks, don't code switch. Mm-hmm. You walk in the door with your words, your language, your common sense, your conventional wisdom, the ways that you know stuff. You don't have to mimic, and nothing against a white male, because I'm married to a colonizer. I'm just saying, We are so valid and we are so worth our weight in gold that we don't have to mimic and pretend that we're something else and use words that are not that are foreign to us, right? And the other thing is, and Colleen knows this, and I think this is one thing I always loved about work with her and Donnie, and actually offline and online, is our sense of humor. Humor is disarming, it's kind, it's respectful, and it's welcoming. And I started learning early on as a trial lawyer, and certainly as a judge, that white people, if you make jokes, if you're funny, people think that you're not serious or you're not smart. Well, we are raised with humor. That's how you let people. I said this before with groups. If you know Native people and they start teasing you and give you a nickname, that means they like you. If they ignore you, don't say too much, they don't like you. And I had to learn, and the other thing I had to unlearn, which going back to what you're saying, is we were raised, the ultimate sign of respect is to be straightforward and honest, even if someone doesn't like what I'm going to say. White people don't like to do that. They like to nibble around the edges and use a word salad, not really do it, be passive aggressive, and then just not really come out and say, I'd rather just, you can call me any filthy name you want as a Native American, whatever, I don't care. But if you just are straight with me and I know where you stand, then we're going to do fine. And that's how I feel about leadership. And that's what I think I bring to City Hall. And some people think it's like, oh, it's kind of like brash. And I'm like, no, that's how I was raised. Does anyone here know Ramona Bennett? Yeah, that was my auntie. Yeah, Julie Johnson, all these women. Billy Frank, Uncle Billy. I mean, that's what we did. And so for me, bringing those kind of ways that we were raised into the regular mainstream governmental political world. I'm saying one quick thing because I want Donnie I know Donnie has a lot to say as a council member. I've read Kamala Harris's book, and if you get a chance to read it, phenomenal book. But one thing that she says two things, but one thing is on page 44, and it always stuck in my head because I did a speech on it. She talks about being in a room with people that she can look out and feeling love and acceptance in humor and fellowship, like in church, where she can put down her armor. And that's such a wonderful feeling. And if I can bring that into a room, then I feel good about that. And I think the other thing is when we talk about leadership, again, we don't have to code switch. We don't have to mimic. We don't have to look at TV and say, well, this is the West Wing and this is how I should be acting and talking. You don't have to do that. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, what an excellent sort of conversation to hold on an evening like this for a lot of different reasons, but I think particularly this moment in this nation. That I was just earlier today speaking with some members of my tribal community, and basically sort of summing up the idea of that dialogue. It was that I am incredibly proud to be Muckleshoot every day of my life. I am never more proud of my tribal heritage than I am during times of challenge, during times of difficulty, when things are ultimately sort of at their worst. As tribal people, we tend to be at our best. So within the last month of the government shutdown, of course, we're concerned and worried and looking to take care of our own members. So when I talk about Muckleshoot, just to provide some context, we have about 3,400 members, give or take, 3,400 people who are meet the cultural and legal criteria to be enrolled members of our tribe. And so that's ultimately who I'm elected by, and that's ultimately who I serve day to day as a leader within the tribe. So we do everything we can to give a hand up to those members within our community who are feeling those difficulties and those challenges most directly. And I think one of the things I can say pretty assuredly is that as tribes today, we do a really effective job in meeting the needs of our people and members, that we are incredibly blessed with this inherent wealth. And providing some context for that, when I talk about wealth, it's not the traditional Western ideology of what you might think that means. It's not the money we have in the bank. It's not the real estate portfolio that we have assigned. It's not the things of value that we're able to collect. When I talk about wealth, what I mean is how well are we able to provide for and take care of ourselves and others, and that's it. So the wealthiest people in our traditional way of thinking and viewing the world are those who provide best for others. And so when we end up in these difficult challenges, 36 days today, officially making it the longest shutdown in the history of this nation, and things like basic food are not making it to the people who need it the most. So Muckleshoot, what we did last week was we looked into charities and food banks which are either on or near military installations, because military are not being paid during the shutdown. And we donated to each and every one of those locations. Not only did we donate money, we actually donated some of the most recent fishery catch from out in Elliott Bay, which is actually ongoing as we speak right now. So fish that were caught yesterday are working their way onto military families' tables today. So when we talk about leadership, really what that is you're willing to be of service, and you're willing to look out for the best interest of your people. And I know that sounds like almost too straightforward or easy, right? But from a fundamental sort of traditional standpoint, that's all it is. You're willing to sacrifice and put your people first and yourself last. So in times of challenge, I think as a tribal leader, it's my responsibility to be at the front. And if there's a fight, if there's a conflict, I'm out front protecting everybody who put me in a position of leadership. And at times of celebration, when there's an award to collect, there's a dinner to grab, there's some benefit that's being picked up, and then it's my job to be in the back, making sure everybody gets their share, making sure everyone's taken care of, and I'm the last one to that table. So it's a fundamentally different way of looking at the world, but I think that we have shown the ability to successfully exist within environments over generations, over hundreds of generations and thousands of years. As Indigenous people, we're the only people in the whole history of the world who have shown that ability. And I think now is a key time to be able to look at that model and to take the things that have proven successful. Final sort of thought associated with the principle of where I started. Those times of difficulty, those times of challenge, when things are at their worst, I don't think that is necessarily what creates or builds character, but I certainly believe that those hard times reveal character. And when it comes to tribal sort of thinking and the way that we exist in the world, I could never be more proud of my people and where I come from. I know who I am and I know whose I am when when the chips are down. That when we have a loss within our community, somebody passes or something horrible happens, that's when our community is the tightest knit. We come together, we make sure that the people who need us most are the ones who get the attention and the focus, and the rest of the community finds a way to hold those people up. And I'm never prouder to be Muckleshoot, I'm never prouder to be tribal than I am during those times of difficulty, during times of struggle. And I think over and over throughout our history, that's what we've shown to be true. And to be able to share that teaching with Western government and Western systems of leadership, through formal systems, through things like the Indigenous Advisory Council, through positions that I sit on within the city of Seattle, the Central Waterfront Oversight Committee. I'm a board member for T-Mobile Stadium. So to bring those values and put them to work in places that traditionally have not had that kind of voice present, it matters. Because the other thing I know to be true as a tribal leader is really one thing, and this is what I base everything I do day to day on. I know for certain that my ancestors and my children are watching me, and every action I take is aimed at making both happy and proud and honoring them.
Wow. Wow, Donnie. You gave me chills multiple times, man. And you know, I really think that these are the kind of words that we need right now. This is the kind of messages that we need to be really amplifying. And I was gonna put a plug in that if you've ever followed Donnie on Facebook, like you constantly are lifting up other people. You are being really positive, and I really value that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to, turn it back over to you, Deborah, to talk a little bit about some of what Donnie was saying, and that is, and I've seen you just really exemplify this through your work on City Council, the things that Donnie was sharing about, leadership, about putting others before yourself, and being sacrificing, and also like putting people's needs at the forefront of your leadership. I remember one time, I won't mention the other council member, but you were council president, and we were just kind of chatting about the dynamics, and you said, well, I talked to her. That's what we do. That's how we, and I always remembered that about, when there's difficult people in difficult situations, you just will boldly say, no, we talk to each other. And so I wonder if you could just talk about how you have been using that leadership lens at City Council.
Colleen, that is such a good question. I want to thank you because you're always, that's one thing I've always loved about you. You're very good about getting questions and always thinking these things through. I realized I didn't share something. My Indian name is Natui Mististaki, and I don't know if I told you what it meant. It means Holy Mountain Woman. But let me get back to what you're saying. Yeah, this is very interesting what I've learned. And if you were raised the way I was raised, and when I got to City Hall, I knew nobody. The only one I knew was Mayor Harrell, and he was Bruce back then. We went to law school together. I didn't know anybody. I wasn't an insider. I didn't know nothing. I was in a law firm. I was a judge. I worked for 2 governors. I did a bunch of other stuff, trial lawyer. So I ran because I wanted to wait till my kids were, out of the house and in college. And I said, okay, now as a single mom, I can run. I don't have to worry about my girls. And what Colleen brought up is really important because I went to City Hall, and and even now, today, and I've learned to just kind of recalibrate, I talk to everybody. I don't put myself as a progressive, liberal, right, left, MAGA, Republican. I don't do that. And
Better
I don't
not be MAGA.
Yeah, but when people get up there and say, a budget's a moral document, I'm like, no, it's a budget. And there's only so much money. So it doesn't mean I don't care. It just means there's X amount of money. And so what are our priorities for the city? But my point is, going to a district system, I talked, and I know what council member you're talking about because I was probably that person's only friend. And you know why? Because I went in that person's office. I went to everybody's office all the time, even when they didn't want me to darken their door, because I needed to know where they're at. You represent this district. You want a new community center. So do I. How do we work this out? Because you know why? Because when you're elected, it's bigger than you. And this is why I don't know if I'm going to ever do another run at politics. Man, it is a dirty little pond because, man, people can politicize anything. And Colleen and Donnie, why I enjoy working with them is it is bigger than us. By the time you get elected, it's not about you and your resume and what you think you've done and the grandstanding and the virtual signaling and all the bullshit. It's about what you are now representing the whole city of Seattle. Not just West Seattle, not just Capitol Hill, not just the North End, not just Laurelhurst, competing. And the only way to get to those needs, what our city's priorities are, like public safety, homelessness, housing, childcare, you have to talk to all your colleagues. You don't have the luxury of being in an ivory tower and quoting AOC or Bernie Sanders or whomever. I don't watch social media. You guys both know how old I am. I'm not on social media at all. I don't watch cable news anymore. I stopped. After 2020, I quit listening to KOW and a bunch of other people because I just felt that I had to get my own news sources and have my own opinions about how the world works. And so my point is this, what Colleen was getting at. Stepping forward into that world as an elected and bringing your whole self there and how you were raised and your sensibilities about right, wrong, good, bad. The bottom line is this, when you get there, the world is bigger than you. The job is bigger than you. It's not about your personality and your ego. It's how do you deliver to a city that elected you to do the right thing. Yes, we stumble. And one thing, getting back to tribal leadership, Indian leadership, these are some of the basic principles I've watched my whole life. You know, when we took over Cascadia, when we took over Daybreak Star, I was there for all that. I mean, as I watched tribal leaders admit when they're wrong, ask for help, apologize, and give other people credit.
Yeah.
You would think those 4 simple principles would transfer over to the non-Indian world at City Hall. Oh no, these people will knock you down to get in front of a camera. I mean, it's just, and I'm not one to, especially when I was council president, that the comms people would say, you have to do this. And I said, no, I'm not issuing a press release every damn week. I don't need to be in front of the camera unless my name's on it and I have something to say, I'm not doing it. So people probably thought I wasn't working. I was council president, I was on Sound Transit. I just don't like to put myself up front. And the other thing I had to unlearn, being in this elected world, in a fishbowl, was we learn not to say me, I. We learn how to say we. I had to unlearn that. But watching politicians and people running for office, count how many times they say I, or they want to talk first, or they want to be in the camera first. And that just says something to me about integrity and who they are and their character and how they're going to lead. And so, like you said, I still, to this day, I go into everybody's office and everybody comes into my office. What I'm learning is I'm kind of the elder on the floor and I'm loving it. My staff is here, so they know. And I love being that mentor to them. Like, you need a win in your district. Quit bringing in amendments. Take the W. You won this. Now you're just pissing people off because you want to be, you want the stranger to love you. Yeah. That's not why we're here. We're here to lead for everybody. So I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that, and that incredible showing us leadership in such a beautiful and native way has been really inspiring. So thank you, and I want to ask Donnie one question, and then we're going to head into an intermission, and we'll have a few more questions, but. One of the things that Deborah has done during her tenure as a council member was to initiate the first ever Indigenous Advisory Council. I think it's one of the first ever in any major city. There's no other major city that has done this. And I mentioned to you earlier, that when I first came to Seattle, it wasn't clear that this was a Muckleshoot in Suquamish City. It wasn't clear to me, and now I'm seeing it become clearer and clearer because of some of the what you both have done. I wonder if you can talk about that advisory council and talk about what does it mean, like, as a Muckleshoot person, to be coming back into your space and not just to it literally, but as a leader in this space. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess sort of first things first, just to provide context. So Muckleshoot. Muckleshoot is not the traditional name of my people. And that's what we're known by today. That's our official legal title, the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe. You'll find that in our Constitution, which dates back to the Indian Reorganization Act. We ratified it originally in 1936 as a direct act, a result of that act in 1934. So Muckleshoot is an anglicized pronunciation of a word in our language, Wilshute Seed, Southern Wilshute Seed specifically. And it has a direct translation. Really what Muckleshoot means is a lookout point, or a point from which to look out. And it carries the connotation of almost like a nose on a face. In our language, it's closer to Buckleshoot is the pronunciation, Buckleshoot. And that actually references a very direct location on what is today our reservation. So our reservation consists of a 5.5 square mile tract of land that is bordered on the north by the city of Auburn, or bordered on the south by the city of Enumclaw, and then we're between the Green and the White River. So that's roughly our borders. If you head to the northern end of that land, which is set aside and held in trust, just sort of to the forward area as you're heading up the hill from the Auburn Valley onto the plateau, which forms the reservation. Off to the left, you'll see this massive area that's all parking lot. And so during the summer, that's where fireworks stands are set up, and individual tribal members, families who own those stands will be out there selling fireworks to you guys. Come on through. They need the business. The point right there on the plateau, if you go to the very edge and you look out, that is the specific location that was traditionally known as Muckleshoot, because you could look out from the plateau and you could see where the Green and the White River converged in the valley. So those two river systems, which are now separate and distinct, used to be a single river system that they came together. They ultimately flowed this way to the north. They became a part of the Duwamish, which empties into Elliott Bay. Today, the White River actually flows the opposite direction. It now is a part of the upper Puyallup system, the Puyallup River, which empties into Commencement Bay to the south. So this river flows the opposite direction of where it has historically. The Black River, actually, today here within the city or adjacent to the city, no longer exists because of the Ballard Locks. The Ballard Locks changed the water table and ultimately dried that river system up, which was one that our people were not only heavily dependent on, but village sites existed all throughout there. And so every one of those different locations historically, there were villages that ultimately became known as Muckleshoot. All of those villages held their own names. All of those villages were referred to by the place in which the village took place. Ultimately, through active and armed resistance, our people fought and engaged against the United States federal government and the military in this region to secure a land base for the people of this region. From the shores of the fresh and the salt water here within the city, all the way to the Cascade Mountain Range and Tahoma, as we refer to it. That's our usual and accustomed areas as Muckleshoot people. And every one of the villages that ultimately benefited from that armed resistance ended up a part of the Muckleshoot tribe. And so all of those various tribal identities and different places from which people originated collectively became known as the Muckleshoot people. Now that's an incredibly, I just spent 7 minutes, and that's about as quickly and as efficiently as I can explain a high level history related to our people to you. So that's a complicated history, which also contains a lot of difficult truth that not everybody wants to talk about or listen to. And so for a long time, that part of the story of this city did not work its way into the discussions like these ones. And so the work that we do in terms of showing up in places like this and taking a microphone and letting the lights hit you bright on a stage, it's really about sharing that story and making sure that it's understood that the name of the city, Seattle, is, again, it's an anglicized pronunciation of a name in our language. There's a relation of the person that it refers to in the audience tonight. Self. And Self, his father was of Suquamish lineage, which is why he's now, his resting place is across Elliott Bay on the island with the Suquamish people. Well, while his mother was from one of the villages that now makes up my people. So the city itself is actually named after one of our relations. And that reality is so fundamentally important when it comes to talking about who we are and why it matters. So when I think of an opportunity like the Indigenous Advisory Council, and Deborah deserves a lot of credit for the work that put that system in place within the city. It's honoring that history, and it's honoring where this city comes from, and it's doing so in tangible ways that impact where the city is going. In that way, it's hugely progressive, that there are literally representatives from all across the country who are reaching out to us to find out what we're doing, how it's working, what the tangible impacts have been and look like, and ultimately, how do we make it work? And it's because people see a model that is incredibly meaningful, and so far has proven to be incredibly successful. And ultimately, they're looking to mirror what we're doing here, and that is really valuable, and it's really meaningful to me to be a inaugural member and active participant in making that a reality within not only our homelands, but hoping that that is an act and a model that it can extend to the rest of the nation. That sort of the realities of the fact about our people is that so often when you start talking about Indigenous people, tribal people, that there's this sort of inherent desire to romanticize who we are, and a lot of times that has to do with the past. But the fact of the matter is there are 3,400 members of my nation and community who I'm responsible for, who are thriving, living, existing, contributing people today, and that we still live here, and that the things that are important to each and every one of you are the things that are important to us. And add to that the additional sense of pride and ownership we have as being tied inherently to these lands, that we've been here literally since time immemorial, hundreds of generations and thousands of years, that this region, the Salish Sea, really doesn't exist without our people. And vice versa, our people don't exist without the Salish Sea. And so participating and playing an active leadership role in the decisions that shape where we're going, that is a role that we inherently need to play, because it's a role that we have inherently always played. And having these formal systems in place that allow us the opportunity to continue to do so matter. And the reality for why I show up for each and every one of those opportunities, and that I am so engaged within the city of Seattle. I'll tell you, I drove up here to participate in this, and when I saw the time, 6 o'clock start, 5:30 if you wanted to hang out a little bit beforehand, I said, man, that's brutal. That commute is no fun. But the reality is our people have been doing that since time immemorial. I at least have the benefit of a gasoline engine and 4 wheels. Historically, my people were doing that in those river systems I talked about with cedar canoes. So when I look at it from that standpoint, I'm incredibly blessed to be able to be here in that way. But the reason that I'm willing to make that commute, and I'm up here, I'm in the city as somebody who works and lives on a reservation that is 26 miles to the south of here, and some of the worst traffic in the country. The reason I do it every day is because it's where I come from. Yeah. It's a part of my identity and traditional culture. But really why I do it is for my daughter and her daughter and her daughter's daughter. Because at the end of the day, this will always be our home. Mm-hmm. And the more actively we have the ability to participate in shaping what our home looks like, the better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Donnie. We are going to take a brief intermission, I think 5 minutes, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about FIFA and how Native community people are going to be impacting that incredible event, and also just some physical infrastructure that's happening. So 5 minutes, and we'll be right back, and we'll take some questions too from the audience. So thank you. soft launch by, I just want to say that there is several Native people in the crowd that I really love, and I mean all of you I love, and even you, Cammie, but especially. I was just pointing out Cammie to some folks in the crowd, but Cammie is the founder and executive director of one of the more important organizations here in Seattle called Hummingbird Indigenous Family Services. I happen to be her board chair and dear friend. She talked me into that easily. But part of the work we do is to address the issues of infant mortality for Native babies here in the city. And if you do not know, we have the highest rates of babies that die in this city, Native people, and sorry, what? And moms. And think about that. It's about 15% this last year of 15%. Take this in. 15%. Now, keep in mind, we have one of the best children's hospitals in the world right around the street. We have excellent health care, but 15% of Native babies died last year between the age of 0 and 1. And so the work that Cammie is doing is to help support these moms, to give them as much as we possibly can through breastfeeding support, through doula care, through advocating for them in the medical system, through guaranteed basic. I was getting there, girl. I will not forget that. We are piloting the largest guaranteed basic income program in the country. For people who we can't serve every Native woman that we'd like to serve, but they go through a lottery system, and they will receive $1,200 a month from the time they're pregnant until that baby is 3 years old. We are about a year into the program, seeing incredible outcomes. It's being documented in this incredible way. You will see documentaries. You will see Cammie talking about it on a national stage. I just wanted to point that out because you are totally my hero, Cammie. Everyone should know about Cammie Goldhammer right here and her work. And if you want to support, please go to Hummingbird Indigenous Family Services. And we're having a gala on November 22nd. It's going to be fire. So please.
Cammie, we got you in the budget too. You know that.
Yes.
Last time, didn't we? Was it last year or the year before I left?
Nope, we're coming to you this year. We're coming to you.
Oh, I thought you did.
Well, that's the other exciting thing is we're going to be buying a birth center in Columbia City.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be looking for county, city, state, everyone's support. But thank you, Cammie, for your good work and for all the other Native folks, including our dear friend Ken Workman, also from the Duwamish community. So we're just so glad that you all could be here. And we want to continue to talk a little bit about the impact of Native leadership in this city. And if you look around this city and you look at the waterfront, I'm gonna go right to you, Donnie. You will see we have a different kind of waterfront than was originally planned even. There has been 20 years ago, there was incredible outreach that was done to the tribes about how the new waterfront would look. And I'm sad to say is that most of it was kind of ignored. And then people like Deborah got involved, and I got a little bit involved, and Donnie got involved, and we all tried to say man, what can we do to make this feel and look more like a Native place and a Native city? So Donnie, you've already kind of hinted a little bit about your work on the Central Waterfront and then T-Mobile Park. Can you just give it to us?
Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't get much more sort of traditional in terms of homelands than what is today the Seattle waterfront. And I think the irony is some of that work in terms of building what it is today. And have you all been there and visited? Just beautiful, right? I mean, it really is a quality representation of what's possible within the city. And to see what it came from and what, the overpass and what Alaskan Way sort of was versus, the Overwalk Park that's there today, the new Seattle Aquarium. You see the visual representation of the tribes and the original identity here in the region. Artists from all over the region who participated, including some of our own. Coleman Dock has work from both Suquamish and Muckleshoot tribal artists. And sort of the reality is as our tribal people had no written language. So when we look to provide teachings or tell our stories, that we do that via an oral tradition. And part of our oral tradition is our visual arts. So, I'm an artist myself, and it's weird to say that. It's one of those things you're never comfortable saying. But it's particularly Southern Salish art. I'm highly biased, and I'm the first to admit it. But I think it's the most beautiful art form in all the world. That you have basically three fundamental shapes: ovoid or circle, crescent, the traditional kind of half moon, and trigons, or some three-sided a triangle-like shape. And with the combination of those, the use of positive, negative space, the use of different color and placement, our artists have the ability to represent anything you can see in the world or anything you can even imagine or think of. And what they use that work for is for sharing our oral histories, for sharing the teachings that our ancestors and elders have passed down to us. And so when you see one of those pieces, it's not just something that's pretty to look at. There's probably a story and a lesson associated with it. And that type of communication has been in this region since time immemorial. And there was a period there where it wasn't as common within the city limits. That Seattle is unfortunately known for sort of importing what Northwest art was thought of from the north of here. So like Formline, Haida, Shimshin, more almost not exclusively Alaskan, but like Canadian, First Nations, and Alaskan style art, including the totem poles that were famous in this region for many, many years. Well, we don't carve totem poles in this region. We do story poles. We do welcome poles or welcome figures. And so to be reclaiming that that element of our oral tradition, that you see it represented at the Seattle waterfront, you see it at each one of the major sports arenas here, that Muckleshoot has a presence. The North Plaza of a CenturyLink is Muckleshoot Heritage Plaza. So you can't walk in one of those doors without walking under Muckleshoot art to get in. There's a bronze canoe in that element. Going up the stairways to get to your seats, there's tribal carving. Climate Pledge, we're actively present there. Every sweater you see, the Muckleshoot logo represented on the Kraken players during every game. The Mariners were the sole and exclusive tribal sponsor in stadium. And so the reason that we do all that is that we're telling our stories, and that we're sharing our teachings, and we're doing it on the grandest scale possible by doing it via visual arts. It's work that I'm incredibly, obviously, like excited and proud of, but even more so that it's a reclamation. It's a reclamation of what this area has always been. So just a month ago, 6 weeks ago, University of Washington, we placed a Southern Salish story pole there, just sort of near the Burke. That is the first ever Southern Salish pole on the University of Washington campus. First ever in the 164 or 5-year history of the university as it sits today.
Chills again, Donnie.
So
Wow.
it matters. It matters. For 165 years, this staple of our region did not represent the people who ultimately come from the region. And all of that work in reclaiming sort of the space and reclaiming ultimately our most traditional way of communicating, that you are here in our homeland. Look, you can see it right there. And here's what that means. It means welcome. It means safe travels when you leave. Hoi lapsabut, what we say. Farewell, take care of yourself. That's all, not only, again, highly biased, the most beautiful work that you'll ever find anywhere in the world, according to this guy.
Well,
but it also is who we are. Fundamentally, it's who we are. So it's an expression of this place as a result. So
And as someone who's lived here for a long time now, like I feel like, and I want to invite everyone here, whether you're Native or not, we should all be so proud of the art that is emerging all over the place, and know that it is our it represents who we are as a city. That we're saying we had we did a wrong thing. All the long houses, all the art that was burned down and is gone, but we can start making the change. And we know that with the absence of that art and design, we have outcomes like we just talked about, where we have Native babies who are dying in this city. When I started becoming a developer of buildings and housing here in Seattle, I think that one thing that just blew my mind is that there are so few architects who are Native in this country that we don't even make the list. I hate this term, but this is what they say. They say we're statistically insignificant on that list. And so when we think about Native moms who are coming into a hospital, and we know what the outcomes are, why do we not think about changing everything in that? I always say every maternity ward in this in this city, if we cared about equity, would have Native art and design all over them, even if we only have one Native mom a month. Because what is good for Native community and what is good for all of us, equity ensures outcomes that are not just good for the population that of a need that we're trying to meet, but it's good for everyone. And so thank you, Donnie, for sharing that. And Deborah, I want to ask you to think and talk a little bit about how you've seen, things emerge and change. I know that you were one of the first people that got behind the project that we did at Seattle Club that includes incredible, beautiful Coast Salish art all throughout the building. And just talk about how you've seen the city change and embrace Native art and design, and it's all over.
Well, I could spend all night on that climate pledge. For 6 years, I chaired the waterfront climate pledge, Seattle Center, Zoo, Aquarium, worked with Colleen and Headwaters to ensure that Native representation and art, but also the bigger piece about civic assets, in that tribes don't just want a kiosk to sell keychains. They literally want to invest in their own brick and mortar soil that's theirs. And Colleen brought up a really good point about the Vancouver airport when I was legal counsel for United Indians, and we actually had space at the Seattle SeaTac airport. We actually went to go visit the Vancouver airport, and we had the same reaction. Oh my God, Indian country, beautiful carvings, everything coastal. So we could probably have another show about this, but I'm just going to give a quick little glimpse, and I'm going to name check a few people. But when I chaired for 6 years parks and did the waterfront and climate pledge and all those things, including bringing the hockey team here, but I was one of the first, along with Louis Gong and Colleen and Matika Wilbur and other tribal leaders, where I really questioned the Pike Place Market PDA, that yes, we all know Marvin Oliver. Yes, those are quote unquote totem poles, but they're not indigenous in sense of place to the people that live here. And those people lost their damn minds. You would think that we were in the South and I was trying to take down a Confederate statue. Yeah. And myself and Councilmember Bagshaw, I just got to the point where I just had enough. Because their sense of their North Star in history is there was no room for you folks. And who am I as a Plains Indian to step up and say, I know enough to know that if I was in Anchorage, the indigenous folks in Anchorage wouldn't want a kachina at their airport because they're not from the goddamn Southwest. So why the hell do you have totem poles and one of them is a farmer pole? And I said, what tribe would carve a totem pole to a farmer for the same people that took their land? So those are the discussions at a level with government where I just had to say, you know what, at some point I'm just gonna have to get up and choke someone. I can't take this anymore. Thank God that's one reason why I put the Indigenous Advisory Council together. I said, if you want to fight with me, okay, I can do it. But I'm gonna have the real people, the indigenous people, sense of place, sensibilities. This is their land, their soil, their oxygen. We walk on their land. I'm gonna put together an IAC. I'm gonna fund it. I'm gonna get a position. We're going to have people on there that will advise the legislative branch and the executive branch in city departments. So you're not just hearing it from me. And then, of course, it just got to this politicized point where, if you go to like Ballard, they have a Norwegian flavor, and everyone accepts that. If you go to, any neighborhood that has a particular ethnic or whatever, like even in New York, you have Little Italy, right? You have all these different neighborhoods. And so I was trying to make these analogies with the Pike Place Market PDA board. And then, at some point I just was a little tired of that. And then I say, and I'm going to name check him because I did email him because I was very angry when I read his article from Mr. Croman in the Seattle Times, and I hope he hears this. Even though I was not on council and he had written something that I thought was very negative in that I basically didn't do anything. Well, excuse me, I was council president and I was on Sound Transit. I was a bit busy after 2020. And so the point was he was trying to make a point by using my tribal ethnicity about taking down the totem poles, that it was analogous to, the Confederacy and people in the South that were taking down Confederate statues. And so I have Mr. Croman's cell phone, so I texted him. And, it's a long story, but in the end, he's like, oh, I will do better. Well, you know what? I almost said a bad word. That's not enough. You need to go back and talk to the people that are from here about how they believe what a totem pole is and what is a welcoming pole. Because instead of making it a polarized racial thing where here's the Native American councilwoman who's trying to take down totem poles and making it more politicized than it needed to be. Because I was just talking about history, the real history. And a lot of non-Indians don't want to hear that. It's like you say, they think we're frozen in amber.
Yeah.
And we're not magic. I don't believe in land acknowledgements because just give us our shit back and we'll be fine. I don't need you to do that. Stop. Stop with the dream catchers. And if I get another bag of sage in it from another non-Indian group, I'm going to lose my mind. I just got one from Amazon. Thank you. Because that's what I do all the time. I burn sage in a little shell at home and have a flute. No, I don't. And when we don't talk about Native American, and Councilmember Hollingsworth has says this on the dais, and I back her up, and I've been saying it for years, and I've heard these two say it as well. They always want to talk about black and brown folks within the four corners of we're marginalized, we're poor, we're vulnerable, we're none of our brilliance.
Yeah.
You people tried to kill us, enslave us, genocide, war, you name it. You've done it all, and we're still effing here.
That's right.
And that's the resiliency of our people. If you can't learn from that, where we sit here with you and we're part of you, where we have to be marginalized in our intelligence and our brilliance, then that's your problem. That's not mine. I don't need you to center and uplift me, okay? I can do that on my own. And I've been doing it, and my kids are doing it. These two young leaders are doing it. Miss Hummingbird back there is doing it. Where's Carol? Where's from Native Action Network? There she is. She's back there doing it. And so me and Councilmember Hollingsworth always have to reframe questions. Because you remember the show Monty Python, some of you who are older, Monty Python. Do you remember that great scene when it says, bring out your dead? Remember that? Me and Joy have a joke behind the scenes where when white people want something, it's like, bring out your BIPOCs. This is my next social justice movement, and I'm going to wear the T-shirt, I'm going to have the coffee cup, and I'm like, can you not do that? Because I'm not a prop. And don't do that. It's offensive on every level. I'm a fully 100% human being that has dealt with adversity that I think has built character, but I am not weak because I'm still here. And so I guess that's my point.
I love it. I had 1,000 chills. Come on, can we give it up for Deborah Juarez? That was such an important thing to say. And I think one thing I just want everyone here to note is that Deborah Juarez, in her brilliance, has been one of our most effective council members that we have had in Seattle for a very long time. She mentioned the Kraken. You talk to Todd Lubicki, the CEO of the Kraken, he will say Deborah Juarez. Yeah. If you talk to Sound Transit, they will say Deborah Juarez helped us pull through many of these really difficult conversations, and including what I affectionately call the Deborah Juarez Station 130 in my district. That was Deborah Juarez. So some of our, the waterfront, we could go on and on. This woman has incredible leadership, not just for Native people, but for all of us who live in this city. So Donnie, I know you got something to say on this.
So just to that end, Deborah Juarez is an amazing leader who happens to be tribal. Yeah. She's not a tribal person who then subsequently is a leader. The other thing, sort of to speak to that exact same sort of end, that the institutional knowledge as it relates to Indian issues in the city of Seattle had been called by the name Deborah for a generation. And so the fact that she went out of her way to create this council of Indigenous people from throughout the region is just such and to advocate and to build it and to put it to work, to fund it, to make it a reality, and then to ultimately allow people to step into it and step aside. That's such a fundamental example of tribal leadership, to the question that we talked about earlier. And then lastly, and that's enough right there, but then lastly, and getting back to the waterfront, so because of all of sort of that, in combination with sort of just the ability to build alliances and advocate effectively on behalf of our people, the Seattle waterfront, getting back to the most meaningful accomplishment for me as a tribal leader. So to be able to participate in the renaming of Alaskan Way to our traditional village site, Zidzalalich, for that location, it matters because that's what not only. I think it was hilarious that the press wanted to talk about the new name for this city, and I had to no. That name is hundreds of generations old. You're just catching up, is what it boils down to. But the tribe will actually be, again, through the leadership of Deborah being back with the city council, the mayor living up to promises, we will be ultimately taking over operating a longhouse at what is now the Bakken building, they call it, right across the street from the Seattle Aquarium. Muckleshoot will have a permanent presence in that location with our longhouse at Zidzalalich for the first time in generations. And so that's the kind of tribal leadership that Deborah brings to the city of Seattle.
Can I say one thing, though? And I have to say, Scotty, I always tease you about this. Well, two things. When you talked about tribal leadership, this is what I was raised with hearing Uncle Billy say. You lead to leave. And what I added is leave a legacy. And then I came back, which now I feel bad about. But I remember Uncle used to say that all the time. And besides, and also turning off the lights because you're killing salmon. He'd say that all the time, you're killing salmon. But one thing I used to hear Uncle in Ramona and Gloria Bean, and I could just write Maisel Bridges, Allison Govertson, I could just rattle off all these elder women that mentored me and grabbed me by the back of the neck when I was out of line. You know, the whole thing about Uncle would say, we don't have a pioneer or a Plymouth Rock story. You know, we don't have an immigration story. We're here. We're not transient people. The Nisqually, the Puyallup folk are going to live or die where they live on that river where it bends. And that's who these people are. That's who my people are in Blackfeet country, on the Two Medicine. And for so long, it's almost like we kept all this emotional knowledge to ourselves, like we didn't really share it. And that's why when I started out speaking about not code switching and using all of that who we are and weaving that into local government and school boards and running for state office and hopefully higher office, because our ways are sustainable because we're still here. And I don't know how to say that any other way. And I do have to say a huge shout out to Colleen when we were going around and around about the waterfront and representation, when we were doing Climate Pledge Arena, when we were getting the NHL here, when I was fighting for the 130th station. You're right, Donnie, I wasn't a Blackfeet, poor Indian that grew up on a reservation. I happen to be a pretty damn good leader that I'm not taking no, and I'm a damn good trial lawyer. And I used to be a judge, so I know a few things. Yeah. And so I always found it interesting that, you know, I've watched certain, well, I'll say it, men walk in a room, a white male, and people just make assumptions that this is what excellence looks like. This is the yardstick for that. Then I come in, I have to say, oh no, I actually been a lawyer for almost 40 years, and yes, I've done that, and I worked on Wall Street and legal counsel to 2 governors. I shouldn't have to rattle off my damn resume. Come on now. That's the kind of stuff that would drive me insane. I remember having talks with this young one and her sister Lael and her other ones, the Kardashians of the Northwest. That's what I call them. All of them. When you get them all together, they're insane. But I used to tell them, you know, people, you guys, well, first of all, you're like a little pack. But I'm like, every Echo Hawk has this name of leadership that we all recognize. We see it, and we see you in different places here, Santa Fe, Washington, D.C. And I would always tell Colleen, it's not really about your last name, it's about who you are, Colleen, and what you represent and how we've learned to be leaders, besides the Pawnee piece and Dancing with Wolves. But then again, my tribe was the only people that killed a few Lewis and Clark folk. We were the only ones that did that, but you know what? They deserved it, I ain't gonna lie. They tried to steal some horses, we're Blackfeet, we don't play, okay? But I used to
They
tell—
learned their lesson.
Yeah, I used to tell the coastal tribes, because they used to tease me all the time about being a Plains Indian. And I have to remind them, this Plains Indian did USV Washington and saved your shellfish rights. You're welcome.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for that. I'm going to keep going. We want to take some time for audience questions. So anyone out there have a question for these two council members, these two incredible leaders? Right here.
Thank you so much for this amazing discussion tonight. What advice would you give to our leaders in Washington, D.C. right now?
Okay.
You mean right now, Trump? Go ahead, Donnie.
Okay. So, the reality is we're living in a time where people are rightfully afraid. And I say that because it seems that the political climate of the moment is to ultimately to point out the differences in people and in groups, and to really sort of tap into fear. At its core base, it's fear that drives all of this polarized sort of language, thinking, and behavior. It's what am I not going to get? What am I missing out on? What am I going to lose? And fundamentally, it's not a political issue when it boils right down to the core of where this nation seems to sit. It's a ethical one, that we have an opportunity to come together as human beings and to look out for the best interest, again, of not only ourselves, but one another. And at its core, the best of what this nation is supposed to represent, that's what it's all about. And believe it or not, even with the history of my people and everything that we have been through from 600 years ago on, the entirety of colonization, the attempt at cultural and literal genocide, the effort of relocation and removal, assimilation, kill the Indian, save the man, all that stuff. Believe it or not, even with all that stuff, I still believe in the potential of the best of what this nation is supposed to represent. That there's nowhere else in the world that I would rather call home or live. But the reality is that we're in a scary time, because there are people who are not necessarily believers in those fundamentals, and the behavior seems to be that those institutions are at risk. And I would certainly encourage real leaders to listen to the voice of their people, whoever that is, whoever they represent, and to remember that when it boils right down to it, no matter where you're from, no matter what your creed, your political or legal status, your racial, ethnicity, identity, we all have way more in common than we do different or apart. And let's find the humanity in that common ground.
Well, Donnie is a very kind man because I don't think that at all. I mean, I agree with some of that, Donnie. I get it. You're a better person than me. You know, Michelle Obama says when they go low, what is she? I say I go lower. I go to the core of the earth, Democrats. Really? Since 2016, no one on cable news could say the man is lying. He's misrepresenting the facts, perhaps. No, he's freaking lying. And that is what I could not believe is why we became this, the Democrats, we became this party of, we wouldn't call it what it was. And what do we got now? We couldn't just say, no, you're lying. You're wrong. You can't do that. Instead, we just wanted to argue and die on hills that, quite frankly, we couldn't get ourselves politically together. And now, every day we hear something bad. And I think to myself, yes, this has been going on till 16, and tomorrow there'll be another nightmare and another nightmare. And we'll keep clutching our pearls and wringing our hands and saying, oh my God, he did this today. He's going to do this. Yeah, he told us what he was going to do, and he's doing it. And you know what? Democrats have to fall in love. Republicans get in line. Yeah. And if we can't set aside stuff, if we're just going to fight about pronouns, if we're just going to fight about not little, I don't mean in that sense, I mean things that don't bring us together as a party, to just say, no, we know what this country was built on and the principles that it represents. A famous, great, beautiful humanitarian idea that we can transcend color, race, gender, anything, because we're built on an idea of immigrants, of all of that, and indigenous people. I mean, this country was built by immigrants and slaves. And you know what? We forgot who we were as Democrats, as leaders, libertarians, progressives, we were on cause. Everyone got caught up in, oh, who gets to be more progressive? I got to a point where I didn't even care anymore. So when they say we go higher, I said, no, I'm going to go to the core of the earth and I'm going to burn you, because you don't get to take away people's rights to food, to housing. You don't get to round up my people, Mexicans. You don't get to put children in cages. You don't get to take the LGBTQ, transgender community and their rights away. And it's not going to end, because we're all sitting back trying to pretend that we have to fall in love with the leader. How about we just get in fucking line and do it? Right? Do it, right? Thank you. I know I wasn't going to drop an F-bomb. I'm sorry I did it.
That is
cut that
a mic drop
Swear
if I've
jar.
ever
Please
heard
don't.
one.
Yeah, take that out.
Yeah. We have just like one more minute. Donnie, do you want to respond to that at all, or anything you want to add?
No.
So good.
Deborah is right on. At the end of the day, okay. I had an elder one time. So I'm a young Native American male, and I'm a warrior by nature. By nature, I'm a warrior. That my first reaction is anger and wanting to fight. Yeah. That's where I go automatically. And I had this elder who, she was 4 foot nothing, 90 pounds, and I was giving her the rundown of this conflict I had with the guy, and she, kind of looked me up and down, shook her head, and I'll never forget it. She, in her real quiet and timid way, told me, well, every time you have a situation like that, you have an opportunity, and you can be a warrior. You can be a warrior, and you can fight, and you can win, and you'll feel better. Or you have an opportunity to be a leader, and you can teach, and you can maybe change someone's heart or their mind, and then everybody feels better. And I've never forgot it.
Let me add something to that, Johnny, because what I learned in Blackfeet culture about what a warrior is, they're not a fighter.
Yeah.
They're a protector of the fire.
Yes.
They're a protector of the fire. That's what I've learned. A warrior is not someone that comes out and hits in the way you see on TV. That's the Anglo-Western version. A warrior in our culture is a protector of the fire and the people.
Yep.
And that's what you're doing. And you know what we're not doing right now? We're not protecting our fire. That makes us American. Yep. That's what I'm going to say.
So our traditional sort of definitions is very similar. It's just somebody who's willing to sacrifice for the people.
Yeah,
Sacrifice
beautiful.
for the people.
Well, I want to thank you both for your incredible words of wisdom. You're hilarious. I appreciate that so much. And I want to just say to all of you out there in the crowd, I hope that you really, I want to invite you to be a part of this kind of leadership, to be protectors of the fire. We are in a unprecedented time in our nation, and we need every voice and every person to speak up in every way that we possibly can. And you both have demonstrated that and have done that for this city, and so I'm so grateful. We also know that we also have an opportunity to be more and more resilient than we've ever been before in our lives, and we have to be stronger and do what we can to stand up against this tyranny that we are facing. And I want to end by saying that one of the more impactful leadership experiences I've ever had was every morning when I would get in to work at the Chief Seattle Club. Chief Seattle Club serves Native people who are experiencing homelessness. They would have been outside all night, experiencing all kinds of terrible, hard things when you're homeless. And we'd open up the doors, and they'd come inside, and they would sit down with their buddies, and they would start drinking a lot of coffee and getting, just kind of just sinking in. And I would go up and hang out with them and hear those stories, and there would be laughter, and there would be jokes like you would not believe. And I shared that because what you said, Deborah, about like just you learned from that. You have, and we know that in the Native communities we say outrageous things, and we are hilarious because that has been our form of resistance despite the attempts for that our government made to erase us. And so I want to gift that story to all of you who may not be Native, to lean into your community, to laugh really hard, to find joy even when there's a lot of tough things happening around you. And we hope that you have a wonderful night. Buy Native, support these people, and let's have a great night. I want to thank the City Club and Julie and Andrew for all of your wonderful work tonight. It has been, and thank you all for being here. Give yourselves a hand. What an audience. Thank you, thank you, thank
Colleen.
you.
Thank you, Johnny.
Well, thank you so much, Colleen. And let's continue to, hang a little bit. I think we can have you guys stay for a little bit and maybe a photo opportunity. And again, thank you so much for our sponsors. And we will have an evaluation that will go out to your email. So please complete it and look out for our next event. Thank you so much. Another round of applause.